The moment she saw him standing in the doorway, she felt a strange mix of anticipation and worry. There was something in his eyes that wasn't there before, an unfamiliar seriousness that made her heart skip a beat. She hadn't expected anyone to visit that afternoon. The sun was dipping low, painting the living room with soft golden light, and the smell of fresh coffee lingered in the air. Her husband was at work, and the house was unusually quiet, except for the sound of cautious footsteps approaching. "Hi," he said, his voice quieter than usual. It wasn't the casual greeting she was used to when family dropped by. Something in the way he stood, slightly hunched and unsure, told her this wasn't just a social visit. "Hey," she replied, trying to mask her curiosity with a gentle smile. "Is everything okay?" He hesitated. His hands fidgeted with the strap of his backpack. Finally, he took a small step forward. I need your advice," he admitted. Her heart tightened. She knew that tone. That tone only came when someone faced a problem they couldn't solve alone, when a question weighed so heavily it felt impossible to speak aloud. "Of course," she said softly, gesturing for him to sit. "Whatever it is, you can tell me." He sank into the couch, avoiding her gaze. There was a long pause, filled only with the ticking of the old wall clock and the soft hum of the refrigerator. She waited patiently. Finally, he looked up, eyes meeting hers. There was a raw honesty there, a vulnerability that tugged at her heart. "It's about my future," he said. "I don't know what to do, and I thought maybe you could help me think it through." Her mind raced. She didn't expect this. Normally, their conversations were lighthearted, about weekend plans, family gatherings, or his recent adventures. But this was different, serious, heavy. "Tell me everything," she encouraged, leaning in. "Start from the beginning." He swallowed hard, then began explaining. His words tumbled out hesitantly at first, then with more confidence as he spoke. He talked about choices, pressures, and dreams that felt impossible to balance. He mentioned moments of fear and uncertainty, times when he felt utterly lost. She listened, letting each word sink in, absorbing the weight of his worries without interrupting. There was a pause as he finally exhaled, a long, shaky breath that seemed to carry months of tension. She reached out and lightly touched his hand. "It's okay," she said softly. "We'll figure it out together. You're not alone in this." He looked at her then, eyes wide, searching. There was a mix of relief and lingering doubt there, as if he wasn't sure yet whether he could truly trust her with this part of himself. But slowly, the tension in his shoulders began to ease. She smiled gently. "Sometimes life asks us questions we aren't ready for," she said, "but asking for advice? That's brave. That means you care about doing things right." For a moment, the room was silent except for their breathing. Outside, the sky had turned a deep orange, the kind that makes you pause and take it all in. She felt a swell of protectiveness and care for him, a desire to help him find his way. Then he said something that made her heart stop just a little. "I didn't know who else to ask. I trust you." Her breath caught. Trust wasn't given lightly, especially to someone not directly in his immediate family. That simple admission spoke volumes. She realized that this conversation was bigger than advice. It was about guidance, understanding, and perhaps even forming a deeper connection than she had anticipated. She nodded, her voice steady despite the fluttering in her chest. "I'll help you. We'll work through it together, step by step." He managed a small smile, one that held both gratitude and relief, and for the first time in hours he seemed lighter, as if a small piece of the burden had already lifted. She knew this was only the beginning. Whatever choices lay ahead for him, this moment would mark a turning point, and she was determined to be there, every step of the way. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. But as he sat back, sighing softly, She couldn't shake the feeling that his story held more than just personal dilemmas. It hinted at secrets and challenges she wasn't yet aware of. Would you like me to start the next part? If yes, please reply with yes. If you want, I can continue with part 2 next, keeping the emotional, romantic, and dramatic tone consistent. Do you want me to do that? The next morning, the house felt strangely alive with anticipation. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting soft patterns on the floor. She sat at the kitchen table, a warm cup of tea in her hands, thinking about the conversation from yesterday. He hadn't left yet. Instead, he lingered, moving quietly around the living room, pretending to read but actually lost in thought. She noticed the subtle tension in his movements, the way his gaze kept drifting toward her, as if searching for reassurance. Finally, he spoke, breaking the delicate silence. "I've been thinking about what I said yesterday," he admitted, his voice low and hesitant. "I want your honest opinion, even if it's not what I want to hear." She nodded, taking a sip of tea. "I promise I'll be honest," she said softly. "But first, I need to understand everything clearly. Walk me through it again." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's complicated," he said. "There are so many possibilities, so many ways things could go wrong. I feel like I'm standing at a crossroads, and every path has its risks." She leaned forward, giving him her full attention. "Tell me about the paths," she urged. "No filters, no sugarcoating." And he did. Slowly, carefully, he described each option he was considering. She listened intently, asking gentle questions to clarify details, helping him articulate fears he hadn't even acknowledged aloud before. There was something comforting in this exchange, a sense of trust growing between them with every word. When he finished, there was silence again, this time thicker, heavier. He looked at her with a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. "I don't even know which one feels right," he confessed. "I just know I can't make this decision alone." Her heart ached a little for him. She wanted to make everything easier, to offer a solution that would lift all the weight from his shoulders, but she knew that wasn't her role. She could guide him, but he had to choose his own path. "You're not alone," she reminded him, placing a hand over his. "I'll help you think it through, weigh the options. We'll figure out what feels right for you, not just what seems safe or expected." He nodded slowly, eyes glistening with unshed emotion. "Thank you," he whispered. I really appreciate that." The day passed quietly, the two of them talking intermittently, sharing stories from their past, moments that revealed who they were beneath the surface. She found herself drawn to his honesty, to the careful way he analyzed each choice, the sincerity in his words. There was a charm in his vulnerability, a warmth that made her feel unexpectedly protective and connected. By evening, the sky had deepened to a rich indigo, and the first stars began to twinkle. He leaned back on the couch, exhaustion evident in his posture. "I feel a little lighter," he admitted. "Just talking about it, even without solutions, helps." She smiled softly. "Sometimes sharing the burden is the first step to clarity," she said. "And sometimes the right answer comes slowly, not all at once." But as she reached for another cup of tea, a sudden thought struck her. There was something about his hesitation, the way he phrased his worries, that suggested this wasn't just about a typical life decision. Something deeper, something more personal was underlying his confusion. Her instincts told her there was more to uncover, secrets he hadn't yet shared, choices he hadn't yet voiced. She felt a mixture of concern and curiosity. Whatever it was, she realized, this moment was fragile. One wrong word, one misstep, and the trust he had placed in her could falter. She took a slow breath, steadying herself. "Tomorrow we'll go through it again," she said softly, her tone reassuring but firm. "You don't have to face this alone." He nodded, a faint smile on his lips. "I'd like that," he murmured. As she cleaned up the teacups, she couldn't shake a lingering feeling of unease. Something in the way he spoke, the pauses between his sentences, hinted at challenges she wasn't fully prepared for. And though she wanted to help him, she realized that the coming days might test her patience, her empathy, and perhaps even the depth of her own courage. The room grew quiet, shadows stretching long across the floor. Outside, a soft wind rustled the leaves, carrying with it a sense of change, of decisions yet to be made, of revelations waiting just around the corner. She glanced at him, seated quietly on the couch, and felt a sudden certainty. Whatever path he chose, it would not only shape his life, but touch hers in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The morning sun filtered gently through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the living room. She noticed him sitting at the edge of the couch, staring out the window, lost in thought. There was a quiet intensity in his gaze, as if he were weighing something far heavier than words could describe. She poured 2 cups of tea and carried one over to him. "I thought we could start today with a fresh look," she said softly, placing the cup on the table. "Sometimes distance helps you see things more clearly." He nodded, but didn't speak immediately. Finally, he turned toward her, eyes searching hers as though hoping she could read his mind. "I didn't sleep much last night," he admitted. "I kept turning everything over in my head, trying to find a solution, but I keep going in circles." She sat beside him, offering a reassuring smile. "That's understandable. Decisions like these don't come easily, but you don't have to face them alone. I'll help you untangle your thoughts." He exhaled slowly and began to recount everything again, this time with more detail, more depth. There were moments of hesitation, pauses filled with vulnerability, and a few glances that betrayed his fear of judgment. She listened, careful not to interrupt, letting each word sink in fully. As he spoke, she realized something important. This wasn't just about making the right choice. It was about him confronting his own fears, his own doubts, and the invisible walls he had built around himself. And she had been invited inside those walls. That trust was rare and fragile. "You know," she said gently after a pause, "sometimes the hardest part isn't choosing the path. It's learning to trust yourself enough to walk it, step by step." He looked at her, a mix of surprise and gratitude in his expression. I never thought of it that way," he murmured. They spent the morning exploring his options, breaking each one down into small, manageable pieces. She helped him weigh the pros and cons, encouraged him to consider what truly mattered, and gently challenged the fears that seemed to hold him back. There was a rhythm to the conversation, a flow that felt natural, comforting, and strangely intimate without ever crossing any boundaries. By midday, a sense of clarity had begun to emerge. He leaned back, a weary but hopeful smile on his face. "I think I understand a little better now," he said. "It's like I can see the shapes of the choices, even if I don't know which one to take yet." She reached out and touched his hand lightly. "And that's enough for today. Understanding comes before action. You've made progress, even if it doesn't feel like it." For a few moments, they sat in quiet reflection, letting the sunlight warm the room. But then, a subtle shift occurred, something unspoken yet unmistakable. She noticed the way his gaze lingered a fraction longer, the way his smile carried a hint of something deeper. It wasn't romantic, not in the way she might have expected, but there was a closeness, a connection born of trust and shared vulnerability. Her mind wandered for a moment, thinking about how rare it was to feel this level of honesty with someone who wasn't part of her immediate family. And yet, here he was, opening up in a way that demanded care, attention, and understanding. Then he spoke again, his voice softer, tinged with hesitation. "There's something I haven't told you yet," he admitted, "something that might change how you see everything I've said." Her heart skipped a beat. She had sensed there was more beneath the surface, but hearing him say it out loud made her pulse quicken. "You can tell me," she replied gently. "I'm here for you, no matter what it is." He took a deep breath and looked down at his hands. "It's about my family. about expectations and responsibilities I can't ignore. I've been trying to figure out how to balance what I want with what they need for me, and I'm scared I'm going to get it wrong." Her heart ached for him.
She could see the weight he carried, the pressure that had shaped so many of his choices, and in that moment, she realized just how much courage it took for him to even speak those words aloud. She reached out, placing a hand over his again. "You're stronger than you realize," she said softly, "and you don't have to face this alone. We'll find a way to honor both your dreams and your responsibilities." He nodded slowly, a mixture of relief and lingering luring in his eyes. But as they sat together, sharing the quiet strength of understanding, she couldn't shake a subtle sense of foreboding. There were layers to his story, hidden corners that even he hadn't fully explored, and she sensed that the next revelation would test them both in ways neither could predict. A faint chill drifted through the room as the wind picked up outside, rustling the leaves in a rhythm that seemed almost like a warning. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the living room. She noticed him pacing, hands buried in his pockets, a restless energy radiating from him. Something had shifted since their morning conversation, a tension that had grown heavier, more pressing. She stayed quiet for a moment, letting him gather his thoughts. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked gently, stepping closer. He paused and looked at her, the vulnerability in his eyes more pronounced than ever. I think you should know everything," he admitted.
"Not just the choices, but why I'm so afraid to make them." She nodded, taking a deep breath. "I'm listening," she said, her voice calm and steady. "No judgment, just honesty." He sank into the couch, rubbing his face with both hands. "It's about my cousin, your husband's cousin," he began, hesitating. "There are expectations in our family that I can't ignore. Certain decisions could upset them, or worse, disappoint people I care about deeply." Her heart tightened. She had suspected family pressures were part of his struggle, but hearing him speak so openly made it real. "I understand," she said softly. "Family expectations can feel like invisible chains, but you're allowed to make your own choices too." He nodded, but his eyes were clouded with doubt. "I know. I just don't want to hurt anyone, and at the same time, I want to be true to myself. I feel like I'm caught between two worlds." She reached out, placing her hand over his. "That's not easy, but the fact that you're thinking about it so carefully shows how much integrity you have. It's okay to take your time figuring it out." He let out a shaky breath and leaned back, finally allowing himself to relax just a little. "I've never felt this torn before. I thought I understood responsibility, but now it's overwhelming, and I don't want to fail anyone, least of all myself." Her heart ached for him. There was so much pressure on his shoulders, so many silent expectations he carried alone. She wanted to ease that weight, to show him a path that was both safe and fulfilling, but she knew she couldn't make his decisions for him. She could only guide, support, and listen. "You've been brave enough to share all of this with me," she reminded him. "That courage counts for more than you realize, and I promise you're not facing it alone." He met her gaze then, a faint smile breaking through the tension. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Your support, it means more than I can put into words." They spent the evening talking through his fears, listing the pros and cons of each potential choice, imagining possible outcomes, and gently challenging the doubts that kept him trapped. With each passing hour, she could see a shift, a tiny glimmer of confidence returning, a spark of clarity she hadn't had before. Yet beneath that spark, she sensed an undercurrent of something unspoken. There were deeper fears, perhaps even regrets that he hadn't yet voiced, and she had a feeling that once those surfaced, the decisions he faced would feel even heavier. As the sky darkened and the first stars appeared, he leaned back, exhausted but calmer. "I think I'm ready to face the consequences of my choices," he murmured, "even if it's hard, even if it scares me." She smiled, a soft warmth filling her chest. "That's all anyone can ask for," she said.
Bravery isn't about never feeling fear. It's about moving forward despite it.
For a moment, they sat together in silence, the quiet comfort of shared understanding wrapping around them like a gentle blanket. But even in that stillness, she felt the tension of what was to come, the weight of decisions yet to be made, truths yet to be revealed, and challenges that would test both of them. Then, without warning, he said something that made her heart skip a beat. "There's one more thing," he whispered, his voice tight with emotion. "Something I've kept from everyone, even myself, and I'm not sure I'm ready to face it alone." The room fell silent, the shadows deepening around them. She knew, instinctively, that this revelation would change everything. The room felt impossibly quiet, the kind of silence that made every heartbeat sound loud. She watched him struggle with words, his hands trembling slightly as he tried to put his thoughts into sentences. She didn't rush him. She simply waited, offering patience and understanding. Finally, he took a deep breath. "I've been avoiding this for a long time," he admitted. "Part of me hoped it would resolve itself, that I could just ignore it, but I can't anymore. I need to face it, and I need someone I trust to help me." Her heart ached with both empathy and curiosity. "You can tell me," she said softly. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." He swallowed hard and looked into her eyes, as if drawing courage from her calm presence. "It's about choosing my path, truly choosing it, not just what's expected of me. I've spent so long thinking about everyone else that I forgot to consider what I actually want. And the truth is, I don't know where to start." She reached out, placing her hand over his. "It's okay," she said gently. "You don't have to have all the answers right now. What matters is that you're willing to try, that you're open to finding your own way." He let out a shaky laugh, a mixture of relief and vulnerability. "I didn't think anyone would understand that," he murmured. "Most people just tell me what I should do, but you actually listen." Her chest warmed at his words. She realized that this moment, this trust he placed in her, was something rare and precious. It wasn't about giving advice or fixing problems. It was about being present, sharing the weight of uncertainty, and showing that he wasn't alone. Together, they began to map out his next steps, not in a rigid plan, but as gentle guidance, considering values, hopes, and responsibilities. They imagined different scenarios, weighed the consequences, and allowed space for mistakes, understanding that life was rarely straightforward. As the hours passed, she noticed a shift in him. The tension in his shoulders eased, his breathing became calmer, and a quiet determination replaced the earlier uncertainty. He was still unsure, still cautious, but for the first time, there was clarity in his heart. "You know," he said quietly, glancing at her, "I think I finally understand what bravery really means." It's not about having the answers. It's about facing the questions, even when they scare you. She smiled, her eyes glistening. "Exactly. And you've been brave every step of the way, more than you realize." For a long moment, they simply sat together, the room filled with a comforting silence. Outside, the wind rustled the trees, and the night sky stretched endlessly, dotted with stars that seemed to mirror the newfound clarity in his heart. He looked at her, a soft gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered, "for listening, for guiding me, for being here." She reached out and squeezed his hand gently. "Always," she said. "No matter what comes next, you won't face it alone." As he leaned back, a quiet smile playing on his lips, she realized that this experience had changed them both. It wasn't just about the decisions he faced. It was about trust, connection, and the courage to confront life's uncertainties together. And in that shared understanding, there was a profound sense of peace. The weight of fear had lifted, replaced by hope, and a promise that whatever came next, they would face it side by side. The night settled around them, calm and reassuring. Whatever challenges awaited, whatever choices he still had to make, they had found something far more enduring, the quiet strength of mutual trust, care, and unwavering support. And as she looked at him, she knew with certainty that this was only the beginning of a journey that would shape both their lives forever. The stars outside shimmered gently, as if echoing the quiet triumph of hearts that had dared to trust and to hope.